On a stormy night, a humble woman stepped through the doors of one of the city's most powerful hospitals. Ignored, dismissed, almost invisible. Little did they know that within minutes, the life of the director himself would rest in the hands of that stranger, and their arrogance would almost cost them everything. Sometimes salvation comes from the place you least expect. Rain pounds relentlessly against the illuminated entrance of Metropolitan Hospital, creating a symphony of water against glass. Pedestrians hurry past with hunched shoulders, seeking shelter from the downpour that has engulfed the city since early afternoon. The hospital's automatic doors slide open, revealing a brightly lit lobby that contrasts sharply with the grey, somber world outside. A man in an impeccable tailored suit strides through the glass doors, shaking raindrops from his Italian leather briefcase with obvious annoyance. His expression reveals a curious blend of self-importance and impatience, the face of someone accustomed to having his demands met without question. Dr. Henrique Vasconcelos, the hospital's administrative director, moves through the lobby with purpose, his eyes fixed straight ahead, not bothering to acknowledge the staff who instinctively step aside as he approaches. He passes directly by an elderly woman who stands quietly to the side, her modest coat damp from the rain. Her silver hair is arranged in a simple bun, and despite being soaked, she maintains a dignified posture. This is Helena, though no one here seems to know her name yet. She has been attempting to gently catch the receptionist's attention, but her soft voice is easily drowned out by the bustling activity of the hospital lobby. The reception area is chaotic, phones ringing, nurses rushing between stations, families waiting anxiously for news of loved ones. Helena stands patiently in line, her hands folded before her, watching as Dr. Vasconcelos bypasses the queue entirely and approaches the front desk with authority. "I'm Dr. Henrique Vasconcelos, Administrative Director," he announces loudly, cutting off the receptionist who had just begun to acknowledge Helena. "I need the board meeting reports immediately." His voice carries across the reception area, causing several heads to turn. The receptionist, a young woman named Mariana with an immediately intimidated expression, abandons what she was doing to attend to the director. Helena is left waiting, rendered invisible in the midst of this small but telling power play. "Excuse me," Helena murmurs gently, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise of the hospital. "My appointment was scheduled for 3 o'clock and it's nearly 4 now." Dr. Henrique doesn't even turn his face in her direction. Mariana makes a hurried gesture, indicating that Helena should wait a little longer, her eyes already back on the demanding director. Helena nods understandingly and steps back, taking a seat in one of the worn chairs along the wall. She removes a small book from her bag and begins to read, seemingly unbothered by the extended wait. Occasionally, she glances up, observing the dynamics of the hospital staff with interest that goes beyond mere impatience. Through the large windows, lightning flashes, momentarily casting dramatic shadows across the lobby. The storm outside intensifies, mirroring the building tension within the hospital walls. "Donna Helena, isn't it?" A middle-aged nurse approaches after Helena has been waiting for over an hour. Her name tag reads Clara, and her expression shows genuine concern. "You're still waiting? It's been more than an hour." "Yes," Helena responds with a gentle smile, closing her book and placing it carefully back in her bag. "It's quite all right. I know everyone is busy." Her voice carries no hint of complaint, only understanding. Clara shakes her head disapprovingly, casting a meaningful glance in the direction of Dr. Henrique, who is now on his phone, laughing loudly at something apparently hilarious, while several staff members hover anxiously around him, awaiting instructions. "He wasn't always like this," Clara whispers, leaning closer to Helena. "Before he became director, Dr. Henrique was one of our most compassionate physicians. Patients adored him. He would spend extra time with each one, really listening to their concerns." She sighs, the weight of disappointment evident in her expression. Now it's like he's forgotten what it means to treat patients with dignity. 3 years as director, and power has changed him completely. Helena's eyes follow Dr. Henrique's animated gestures as he continues his phone conversation, oblivious to the growing line of patients waiting to be seen. "Sometimes people need time to remember why they chose certain professions in the first place," she comments thoughtfully. "The higher we climb, the easier it becomes to forget the ground beneath our feet." Clara looks at Helena with surprise, struck by the wisdom in her words. "You're very understanding." Most people would be furious after waiting this long. She touches Helena's shoulder gently. Come with me. I'll try to expedite your appointment. Before they can move away, Doctor. Enrique's irritated voice cuts through the general murmur of the reception area. This is the third time this week we've had delays with the test results, he exclaims, now addressing a young resident who stands before him, clutching a tablet and looking increasingly distressed. How do you expect me to maintain this hospital's reputation with such incompetence at every turn? The resident, Dr. Livia Santos, attempts to explain. There was a system failure in the laboratory, sir. The technicians are working to... I don't want excuses, Enrique interrupts sharply, holding up his hand to silence her. I want solutions, results. My son is doing his residency at Central Hospital. Now there's an institution that functions as it should. Efficient, professional, no endless excuses for substandard performance. Dr. Livia's shoulders slump slightly, but she maintains her professional composure, nodding in acknowledgement of his criticism. Helena observes the interaction silently. Though her expression remains neutral, her eyes reveal a depth of understanding, as if she can see beyond the surface of the director's behavior to the insecurities that might be driving it. People change. Clara continues quietly, guiding Helena toward a less crowded area of the waiting room. His research on emergency protocols saved countless lives. Now it seems he's completely forgotten the Hippocratic Oath. Helena looks at Clara with genuine warmth. We all lose our way sometimes, she says softly, especially when we feel pressured to prove our worth through methods that contradict our true nature. Clara studies Helena curiously. You speak as if you know something about this. Helena simply smiles, her eyes reflecting decades of experience that remain unspoken. Let's just say I've seen how power can transform people, for better and for worse. From across the room, they hear Dr. Henrique continue his tirade. We need to restructure the entire emergency response protocol. Our response times are abysmal compared to Central Hospital. My son tells me they've implemented a new system that has reduced waiting times by 30%. 30%. And here we are still using outdated methods because people refuse to adapt to change. Several staff members exchange weary glances, their faces betraying the strain of working under such demanding leadership. He mentions his son at least 10 times a day, Clara confides. Rafael is his pride and joy, following in his father's footsteps, but at the rival hospital. I think Dr. Henrique feels he has something to prove, that his leadership here can outshine whatever they're doing at Central. Helena nods thoughtfully. The desire to impress our children can be a powerful motivator, sometimes too powerful. As the afternoon progresses, Helena continues to wait patiently. The hospital's rhythm gradually slows as the day shift begins to wind down. The rain outside has lessened to a gentle patter, but occasional thunder still rumbles in the distance. Dr. Henrique remains a commanding presence, now with a coffee in hand, issuing increasingly authoritative directives to staff members who look progressively more exhausted. The board meeting is tomorrow morning, he reminds a group of department heads gathered around him. I expect each of you to have your quarterly reports finalized and on my desk by 7 a.m. No exceptions, no extensions. He takes a long sip of his coffee, checking his watch impatiently. Central Hospitals submitted their annual review 2 weeks ahead of schedule. I refuse to let our institution appear any less efficient. The department heads nod in unison, their expressions a mixture of resignation and determination. As they disperse, Dr. Henrique's phone rings. He answers with obvious irritation. Vasconcelos speaking. This had better be important. His words cut off abruptly. The color drains from his face in an instant, transforming his expression from annoyance to shock. What do you mean, accident? Where is he now? What? Everyone in the lobby freezes, attention drawn to the sudden change in the director's demeanor. The powerful, composed man who moments ago had been issuing commands with complete authority now appears utterly disoriented, vulnerable, in a way that startles those who know him. My son, Rafael. Motorcycle accident, he manages to say, his voice barely above a whisper. His hand trembles visibly as he clutches the phone. He's being transported to emergency. Here. He's coming here. The news spreads through the hospital with lightning speed. Staff members who moments ago had been counting the minutes until their shifts ended now move with renewed purpose, preparing for the incoming trauma case. Clara approaches Helena, who has observed the dramatic shift in atmosphere with quiet attentiveness. The director's son was in a serious accident, Clara explains, concern evident in her voice. They're bringing him to our emergency department. I'm afraid your appointment might be delayed even further. They'll likely divert all available resources to him. Helena simply nods, her expression compassionate. Of course, family must come first. There is no hint of resentment in her voice, only genuine concern. Is there anything I can do to help? Clara looks surprised by the offer. That's very kind, but before she can finish, the emergency doors burst open with a thunderous bang. A trauma team rushes in, pushing a gurney at full speed. On it lies a young man, approximately 25 years old, immobile, secured with a cervical collar and an oxygen mask covering much of his face. Blood has soaked through parts of the bandages hastily applied at the scene, and monitoring equipment beeps with alarming urgency. Dr. Henrique lunges toward the gurney, his face contorted with fear. "Raphael! Raphael, I'm here!" he cries, reaching for his son's hand. One of the paramedics blocks his path firmly, but respectfully. "Please step back, sir. We need to take him directly to the trauma room." "You don't understand. I'm his father. I'm a doctor, the director of this hospital." Enrique's voice cracks with emotion, all traces of his earlier authority replaced by desperate panic. "That's precisely why you need to stay back, Dr. Vasconcelos." The paramedic responds firmly. "You're emotionally involved. Let the trauma team do their job." Dr. Henrique staggers backward, as if physically struck. For the first time, everyone witnesses the powerful director completely defenseless. Not an administrator, not a physician, merely a father terrified for his child's life. Helena watches from her corner, her eyes reflecting deep compassion for the man who hadn't even acknowledged her existence hours earlier. An hour passes in agonizing slowness. Dr. Henrique sits alone in a corridor chair, head cradled in his hands. Staff members pass by, offering sympathetic glances, but no one dares approach. The doctors remain with Raphael, fighting to stabilize his condition. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Henrique's face, accentuating every line of worry, every moment of his private anguish made public in this sterile hallway. The man who had commanded the hospital with unwavering authority now appears diminished, helpless in the face of circumstances beyond his control. Finally, a doctor emerges from the trauma room, his expression grave as he removes his surgical cap. Dr. Martin Almeida, the night shift trauma surgeon, approaches Henrique with measured steps. "Dr. Vasconcelos," he begins, his tone somber, "we need to discuss Raphael's condition." He hesitates, choosing his words carefully. He has sustained significant internal injuries, including a severe hepatic laceration. We're dealing with internal bleeding that we're struggling to control. The hemorrhage is progressing rapidly, and his vital signs are becoming increasingly unstable. "You have to do something." Enrique's voice is unrecognizable, stripped of all its earlier authority. "Anything. He's my only child, Martin." "We're implementing all standard protocols," Dr. Almeida continues, maintaining his professional composure despite the emotional situation. "But given the severity of the vascular trauma, it might be prudent to consider transferring him to Central Hospital. They have Dr. Mendez, the vascular trauma specialist, who might—" "There's no time for a transfer," Enrique interrupts, his medical knowledge overtaking his emotional response momentarily. With that degree of hemorrhage, he wouldn't survive the journey. You know that as well as I do, Martin. Dr. Almeida's silence confirms the terrible truth of this assessment. "Then what do we do?" Henrique asks, desperation evident in every syllable. "Tell me what to do, and I'll make it happen. Whatever resources you need, whatever specialists—" At this moment, Helena rises slowly from her seat. She approaches the group with calm, deliberate steps, her modest appearance belying the confidence in her movement. Despite her damp clothes and unassuming demeanor, something in her bearing draws the attention of those around her. "Excuse me," she says in a clear, gentle voice that somehow carries authority without demanding it. Everyone turns to look at her, surprised by the interruption. "Doctor." Henrique barely registers her presence, his mind consumed with his son's condition. "Who are you?" he asks impatiently, not recognizing the woman who had been waiting in his hospital for hours. Clara steps forward. "This is Donna Helena. She's been waiting for her appointment since—" "That's not important right now." Enrique cuts her off, turning back to Dr. Almeida. "We don't have time for—" "Doctor," Helena continues, now looking directly into Henrique's eyes with unwavering calmness. "I can help your son." The simple statement, delivered without hesitation, causes Henrique to pause. He studies her properly for the first time, confusion evident on his face. "Are you a doctor?" he asks, skepticism mingling with the faintest glimmer of hope. "I was chief of vascular surgery at Hospital das Clínicas for 20 years, Helena responds with quiet dignity. "Specialist in complex vascular trauma. I've been retired for 5 years, but I maintain an active medical license." A profound silence descends upon the corridor. Dr. Henrique stares at her in astonishment, as if seeing a ghost. "Dr. Helena Rodriguez," Dr. Almeida asks, recognition dawning on his face. "The author of the emergency protocol for traumatic hemorrhaging." His voice contains unmistakable reverence. Helena nods modestly. "Yes, that's correct." "Why didn't you say anything?" Henrique asks, bewildered and slightly ashamed as the realization of how he had ignored her begins to sink in. "I tried to introduce myself when I arrived," Helena replies with a gentle smile that holds no accusation. "But you were too busy to listen." The statement carries no judgment, merely an observation of fact. Henrique lowers his eyes, the full weight of his behavior throughout the day crashing down upon him at this crucial moment. "Now," Helena continues with practical focus, "if you'll permit me, I'd like to examine your son." Dr. Almeida looks to Henrique, who nods wordlessly, humbled beyond response. As Helena walks toward the trauma room, she briefly touches Henrique's shoulder, a simple human gesture of compassion that speaks volumes. "We'll do everything possible for Rafael," she promises quietly. "Sometimes the universe has strange ways of bringing the right people together at exactly the right moment." 3 hours pass, each minute an eternity for Henrique. He remains seated in the same chair, motionless, his usual energy completely depleted. His face shows the weight of hours of anguish, the accumulated stress of a parent facing their worst nightmare. Occasionally, hospital staff pass by, offering supportive words that he barely registers. Trapped as he is in his private hell of uncertainty, the hospital has quieted for the night shift. The storm outside has passed, leaving behind a gentle patter of rain against the windows and the occasional distant rumble of thunder. Time seems suspended in this liminal space between hope and despair. Finally, the doors to the surgical suite open. Helena appears, still wearing her surgical cap, her mask hanging loosely around her neck. Though visibly tired, her eyes remain clear and serene, carrying the calm assurance of someone who has navigated countless medical crises throughout her career. "Rafael is stable," she says simply, her voice soft but distinct in the quiet corridor. "We've contained the hemorrhage. The hepatic laceration was complex, but we managed to repair the primary vessels and establish collateral circulation. He'll need careful monitoring and recovery time, but there's no apparent neurological damage from the hypoperfusion episode." Enrique's face transforms instantly, hope dawning like sunrise after the longest night. He stands unsteadily, his legs weak with relief and lingering anxiety. Can I see him?" he manages to ask, his voice thick with emotion. "Of course," Helena responds warmly. "He's being transferred to the ICU now. You can accompany him there. He's still under anesthesia, but sometimes even in that state, patients can sense the presence of loved ones." As Henrique moves to follow the transfer team, he pauses beside Helena. His eyes are brimming with tears he makes no attempt to hide. "I don't know how to thank you," he says, his voice breaking. "You saved my son when I didn't even have the decency to acknowledge you when you arrived." The admission costs him, but he makes it nonetheless, humility finally breaking through the carapace of authority he has built around himself. Helena smiles, lines of wisdom crinkling around her eyes. "We don't always need grand gestures to make a difference, Dr. Henrique. Sometimes we simply need to remember why we chose to become physicians in the first place." Henrique bows his head, her words striking a chord deep within him, reminding him of ideals long buried beneath administrative responsibilities and professional competition. "You know," Helena continues thoughtfully, "I came today merely for a routine checkup, but as I sat in your waiting room, I observed the dynamics of this hospital, the dedicated staff, the challenges, the potential. Perhaps my presence here today served a greater purpose than either of us anticipated." Henrique looks around, truly seeing for the first time in years the faces of his team, tired but dedicated professionals whom he had begun treating as mere cogs in an institutional machine rather than the skilled healers they were. "Would you be willing to help me?" he asks hesitantly, vulnerability replacing his usual commanding tone, not just with Raphael's recovery, but with the hospital. "We need someone to remind us of the fundamental values of medicine, the principles I've allowed to become obscured by metrics and competition." "It would be my pleasure," Helena replies with genuine warmth. "After all, we never truly retire from the mission of caring for others, do we? Medicine isn't merely a profession, it's a calling that remains with us throughout our lives." 1 week later, Metropolitan Hospital has undergone a subtle but profound transformation. Dr. Henrique walks through the corridors, greeting staff members by name, stopping to listen to patients, genuinely seeing the people around him perhaps for the first time in years. In the boardroom, Helena sits beside him as a special consultant. Together, they are implementing changes that prioritize not only efficiency, but also human care, creating a balance between the necessary administrative functions of a modern hospital and the compassionate attention that every patient deserves. Raphael, now in recovery, observes his father with newfound admiration from his hospital bed. "I never thought my accident would bring about such transformation," he comments as Henrique adjusts his pillows with paternal tenderness. "You're different, Dad. In a good way." Henrique smiles, the lines of worry on his face now softened by a renewed sense of purpose. "Sometimes we need to fall in order to learn how to rise again in a better way," he responds thoughtfully. "It took nearly losing you to understand what truly matters, and it took a woman I completely ignored to teach me the most valuable lesson of all." "Which is," Raphael asks, genuinely curious, "that our true strength doesn't lie in the power we exercise over others, but in our capacity to serve and recognize the value in each person who crosses our path." Henrique's voice carries the conviction of someone who has experienced a fundamental shift in perspective. "I'd forgotten why I became a doctor in the first place. I'd forgotten the privilege it is to be trusted with people's care at their most vulnerable moments." From the doorway, Helena observes the scene with quiet satisfaction. Clara, the nurse who had first shown her kindness, approaches with a cup of tea. "You've changed this place," Clara says with emotion in her voice, "and you've changed Dr. Henrique. How did you manage it?" Helena smiles, accepting the tea gratefully. "It wasn't me," she replies. "He simply reconnected with the physician he has always been. Sometimes we all need a reminder of who we truly are and why we're here." She takes a thoughtful sip of her tea before continuing. "True wealth isn't found in the position we hold, but in how we treat those who can offer us nothing in return. The most meaningful power isn't authority over others, but the ability to elevate those around us through recognition of their inherent value." In the days that follow, Helena's influence continues to spread throughout the hospital. Wait times decrease not through harsh directives, but through more efficient systems designed with patient dignity in mind. Staff morale improves as their contributions are acknowledged and valued. The competitive focus on outperforming Central Hospital gradually shifts to a collaborative approach, with both institutions beginning to share resources and expertise. And Dr. Henrique, once feared for his demanding leadership style, becomes known instead for his thoughtful mentorship of younger physicians, rediscovering the joy of teaching that had once been his passion before administrative duties consumed his focus. In a quiet moment between consultations, Henrique finds Helena in the hospital garden, enjoying a moment of sunshine after days of rain. "You know what I've been thinking about?" he asks, taking a seat beside her on the bench. "Tell me," she responds with genuine interest. "That rainy afternoon when you came in, if the weather had been clear, if my son hadn't had his accident, if you hadn't been kept waiting for hours, how many lives might have been affected? Not just Raphael's, but all the patients who will benefit from the changes we're implementing now." Helena nods thoughtfully. Life rarely follows a straight line. Our greatest challenges often become our most profound opportunities for growth. The rain that soaks us may be nourishing seeds we didn't even know we had planted, as they sit in companionable silence, watching hospital staff and patients enjoy the garden. And what about you? Have you ever been overlooked simply because of your appearance or position? Or perhaps you've been too busy with your own priorities to recognize the value of someone crossing your path. Share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of redemption and transformation. Remember that sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from those we least expect, And our greatest growth often emerges from moments when we're humbled enough to truly see others. Because in the end, it's not our titles or achievements that define us, but the way we treat each person we encounter along life's journey.